From influencing our emotions to the flavor of foods, our sense of smell can either embed happy experiences in our memories or produce the famous gag reflex. Come join us for a discussion about what God finds to be a pleasing aroma or a filthy stench on the way.
Welcome to The Way with Leslie King and Scott Grimmett.
How it sways in the sun, keeping our stories in its motion.
Our sense of smell is one of the strongest human senses that we have. I mean, our sense of smell triggers these wonderful childhood memories of mom or grandma cooking in the kitchen, our favorite meal or dessert or cookies. Oh my gosh. And it just spurs a whole flow of emotions that come out with that. And it also can bring an individual to just curling their nose, even when the smell is not present. Just the memory, of that nasty smell kind of can make your stomach turn. And really, it's really amazing how we see a likeness of this in the Bible. Yeah. And it starts out in Genesis chapter 8, around verse 21 or so. It's Noah comes out of the ark, and he is going to offer up a sacrifice to God. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, we see that sacrifice taking place, a burnt offering. And the scriptures say that God was so moved in heart by the pleasing aroma that he swore to never curse the earth again, even though the inclinations of man's heart are evil, even at a young age. Right. So just very interesting there that God's heart moved and he says, I will never do that again, even though I know that you guys are wicked.
Right. It shows that he has these same exact reactions we have.
Yeah.
And more to the point that he is where he got those reactions.
Absolutely.
It also shows that the five senses actually begin in the spirit because God is spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah. He
very
smells.
Good.
He has the five senses. We get that from him.
Mm-hmm.
And so every account in the Bible also proves that, whenever we shed this flesh one of these days, we don't stop feeling, smelling, tasting. Smelling is a huge deal.
Absolutely.
Because it recurs through the Bible over and over again how the Lord is either pleased or displeased with something, and it's usually associated with the smell.
Absolutely. And so we're going to take a look at some of that. Of course, you see that in Genesis, and then in the Torah, in Numbers and in other places, in Leviticus, things like that, it talks about offering a burnt offering, a food offering, free will offering, or offerings that indicate a vow has been taken place. And they're pleasing aromas, what's burning on the altar. And so we see that over and over again, and that's one of the things like we saw in Noah. It's pleasing, whatever that took place with Noah, also as a part of the rituals in the temple. Now, we know this pleasing aroma of a sacrifice for a vow, for a sin offering, and just for something to give up to God.
Right.
There's also the other side of the coin, and we always try to bring these in, is that in Isaiah 65:5 and in Amos, it talks about how those sacrifices at a certain point became like a stench in God's nostrils.
And that's exactly right, because the sense of smell, the Lord makes very clear that this is a very potent thing for him. Mm-hmm, and it always had to be more than just the smell of beef.
Yeah. It wasn't just, it was some good barbecue.
It wasn't a good barbecue happening, and he was very pleased with it. If that were the case, we could just bribe him all the time. Fire up the Barbie, and we're all good with God.
Throwing a T-bone, and I'm good.
No, the sense of smell next to the sense of sight is the most potent of all of our senses.
Right.
It literally has memory association tied with it, as you pointed out earlier.
Absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it is like it's a powerful thing, and it is important for us to always be a pleasing aroma to our God.
Absolutely. It's very interesting that memory and that response to smell can either bring something in closer, or it can do the gag reflex and vomit out, or give the hurl effect, right?
That's right.
So we're going to unpack this a little bit, and we have some little ditties we're going to look at. The first one is, and we're going to jump forward to the New Testament, and it is the aroma of Christ or the stench of rejection. And so we see in 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 15, Paul talks about us being the aroma of Christ, and how to those being saved, we're a pleasing aroma. Right. But then to those who are not, who are rejecting Jesus, we're the stench of death.
Concurrently.
Man, yes, it is. So you're walking around, and so we go to the New Testament, and we start to really see the shadow come to life, which is very meaningful, I think.
Well, I think we should pause and point this out for a moment, though.
Okay.
The fact that you are pleasing to God, that you're a pleasing aroma to God,
Okay.
concurrently with being a stench to the world,
Right.
it goes to show you the fallacy, the foolishness of trying to change yourself
Okay.
to be more appealing to the world.
Okay.
There are congregations all over this world who are making a terrible mistake with the seeker-sensitive stuff.
Oh, okay.
They are trying to change the way they smell.
They're trying to be a pleasing aroma to the world.
To the world, trying to attract people that way. Well, by definition, if the Bible makes it very clear that you will be one thing or the other. It's an all or nothing scenario.
Right.
You're going to be either a pleasing aroma to God or you're going to be a pleasing aroma to the world. If you try to be a pleasing aroma to the world, hey, guess what? You're kind of stinking to the Lord right now.
You're right. You become a stench to him.
Right.
Right. You can't be both. And we really want to anchor in on this whole idea that God's using this analogy and all this because, yes, he has smell and, yes, he has those responses, but he knows that we will understand it because we were made in his image. And the fact of you can't smell a vomitous smell along with a sweet cookie smell.
No.
And to your point, it's one or the other.
It's one or the other. Of all the senses, we have 5 senses. Of all the senses, this is the one that can't be fooled. You know, you can fool somebody with a photogenic, mock-up or, some...
Yeah, the magician thing or...
Well, yeah.
Or Photoshop.
Deep fake or Photoshop or stuff like that.
Yeah,
you can actually if you can fool the eyes, you can fool the senses. You can actually fool almost all of them to manipulate people to your will.
Right.
The one sense that is the most difficult to fool and is smell.
That's right.
Because smell tells you the story every single time.
Absolutely.
When you have milk and you're worried about it being bad, what do? You
smell it.
You smell it.
Absolutely.
And it's a universal thing. I don't know if anybody on earth who has ever smelled bad milk and said, well, this might work.
Right.
Work
me up some of that.
No, universally it gets thrown out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the interesting part about it is all of this, your smell influences how you taste things even. And so the first one was pleasing aroma or the stench of rejection.
Right.
We want to be rejected by the world. We want to be accepted by God as a pleasing aroma.
That's right.
Now, the next thing is because if we're a pleasing aroma to Christ or for Christ, we're witnesses. We're living the life. We're not cowering back. The next thing we see in the scriptures, it's actually in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 2, and it's in Philippians chapter 4, verse 18, where Paul says, your gifts and your offerings to the needy and the poor and to my ministry are a fragrant offering and a sacrifice to God. So we see there that a witness that holds true to the gospel is a aroma of Christ. And now we see we want to be also fragrant smells and a fragrant offering by being generous and giving and loving in a way that now puts our witness into action.
Right. And the flip side of that coin, unfortunately, is the spirit of religion. And the spirit of the religion, I believe, if you were wanting to put your imagination cap on and imagine what that might smell like, I would think it had to be like a musky kind of stale smell.
Right.
Like anything that should be, stirred up and kept fresh.
Absolutely.
And is no longer being attended to as it should be. This is our relationship with the Lord. He's real time. We are real time. Our relationship with him is real time. And
good statement.
The spirit of religion is, I believe, a stale
opening
stench.
a coffin stench.
Right.
And I think that's right. So we've got a fragrant offering or a religious stench.
That's
Which
right.
one are you?
Which one are you?
Which one are you?
And you got to be meaningful with it. You can't phone this in. The smell will always give you away every time.
Absolutely. So religion sits in a pew and boast on what they know.
Right.
A fragrant offering is out there putting the scriptures into action. And so this is real important for us to kind of keep this in mind because either we are a pleasing aroma or we're a stench of rejection by the world. And we want to make sure we balance those in the right way.
Right.
And the same thing with the fragrant offering. That's your testimony. That's your aroma of Christ in action so the world can see what Jesus is like.
Right, and don't reject God when he comes around. And if you get a spur in your heart that something is stinking, he lets you know about that. It's because he wants you to take a bath. He wants you to get cleaned up.
Yeah, right.
Don't resist that.
Right.
Because that's part of what revival is that people who have
Absolutely.
allowed themselves to get a little rank, and the Lord comes around and says, "Hey, look, this is not a pleasing aroma to me. This is kind of smelling bad here, be responsive to it, because that's what God is real time. We must be real time, and there's nothing more important than being a pleasing aroma to our Father.
Absolutely. Like you just said a moment ago, is that it's stale, and we've heard the old adage. A pig doesn't smell that he's a pig.
That's right.
Or a skunk doesn't smell his own stink.
Right. They don't know they stink.
And when you're in religion, you actually think you're smelling pretty good.
Right.
And because you're attending church, and maybe you're giving more money, and maybe you're memorizing more scriptures, and you're doing all those things that are good, but you should never do those and forget that you should be doing the latter things of being generous, being kind, being a fragrant offering, and being a pleasing aroma to God.
And understanding that you can't be both to the world and to God at the same time.
No, you can't straddle that fence.
I think we can't illustrate that too much. I think it's good to hit it one more time before we go.
Absolutely.
It's important that we understand that we need to be kind to the world. We need to be showing God's light to the world. We need to be winning souls for the Lord. But you don't do that by changing how you smell.
No, absolutely. Great analogies. I just love how we're covering this. What we're going to do now is do just a really quick recap.
Okay.
And that is God's nose and his smell brings about an acceptance or a rejection of his people.
That's right.
And we need to be really mindful of that. And he uses the smell thing because he made that a very prominent sensory for us as well. But I can only imagine that, some days, some people, even Christians, are giving him a gag reflex. And you don't want to be the guy doing that, right? All right. And our second one was the aroma of Christ or the stench of rejection. And so I think you want to be the aroma of Christ to God, and it's okay to be the stench of rejection to the world, because as Paul said, you're one or the other. You are the aroma that's pleasing to God and of Christ to those being saved. Right. But to those that are dead in the spirit and rejecting it, you're a stench. Why? Because you're a reminder of a loving God who's trying to bring you in.
You have to be good with that. Yeah, I mean, seriously, you have to be good with that, because otherwise you're a hypocrite.
Yeah.
You do not want to be displeasing to your Lord while trying to, conform to the standards of this world. You just don't want to do it. You come off that stinking every time.
Absolutely. All right, our third one we covered was a fragrant offering or a religious stench. And as you rightfully noted, a religious stench is like a stale air in a coffin or in a room that almost has an old vomit smell to it something. So very bad.
Yeah, an abandoned building, just in a short period of time, will always start smelling stale.
Absolutely.
We must be a pleasing aroma to him. And it's a spiritual thing.
Right.
Bleeds
absolutely.
up through the flesh.
It absolutely does. And from the heart. And so you can't be a pleasing aroma and a fragrant offering at the same time you're being a stench to God. So everyone, we want to thank you for tuning into this show. And we do invite you to come visit us at thetruthandthelife.com. We'll see you on the way.
To learn more about The Way, visit thetruthandthelife.com.
Send me your songs of tomorrow.